distinct pleasure of introducing you to Joanna Bloor. I've known Joanna, gosh, I've been a fan of hers for a decade and a half at least. And well, more than that, probably as soon as I heard of her, I became a fan. And Joanna is a TEDx speaker. She has a high profile career with really impressive companies. She is just sought after for her creative and wild ideas and predictions and so Joanna is truly a futurist and a potentialist. And I look to Joanna whenever I, have an inkling that something is, coming up and I just want her insights. She is full of insights. And so and I'll let her talk a little bit about herself. But what we're going to do today is a slightly different format. It's really going to be an open dialogue. What I want you to do, we're going to have everyone mute, but as you have questions, put them in the chat and we'll bring them up. But you're going to see how Joanna and I kind of banter back and forth. And I want to pull out as many pearls from Joanna as possible because the woman is brilliant and she really causes your brain to bend and for you to think differently. And that's what this session is all about. We've got to think differently across the board, whether it's personal, business, or job search. I mean, all of it. We really want to think differently. And Joanna's going to help stimulate some thoughts and cause us to question maybe some things that we think we know. So, Joanna, go ahead and introduce yourself and then we'll jump in.
Well, good Lord, what a no pressure introduction. Like the best person ever, blah, 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 blah. You know what? I am not going to waste time with the whole introduction thing. Like y'all can read. And I'm guessing if you all got up this morning and said, I'm going to come do this, is you've already gone out and been like, you have all actually already made a decision about who I am and what I do before you logged on this morning. And so, my job or our job today is to kind of expand that thinking, perhaps validate that thinking, do all sorts of things. But yeah, I'm excited about this because you were like, will you come talk to my people? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And I was like, but I don't want to present because like that's a formed thing. And as you will all find out very quickly, I'm about the idea and the unformed as opposed to it fits nice and tidily in a box.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And so Joanna, you are a potentialist
Yep.
and everyone used to refer to you as the fairy godmother, right? And that was such an appropriate label for you. It was because that's who you were. And now you're even more. So the potentialist, the futurist, it's even more than just a fairy godmother. Tell us, well, define potentialist in your mind, and then the evolution.
Okay. Well, so spoiler alert, I still go by the moniker of fairy godmother. It depends on who is engaging and who is asking and who they need to show up. I usually start with the potentialist because often my conversations are with people talking about the future and their professions and their ideas and all of that sort of stuff. But the fairy godmother is still very much alive and well and hiding in the background because she can't help herself. And so she shows up. Defining a potentialist, I'll start with this. It's not a name I gave myself. It's a name somebody else did. And I know I recognize a couple of faces in here because this is my second time around here. I came in and talked, I can't remember how long ago, a couple of years ago, might have been during COVID. And for those of you that were here, you'll remember kind of what is now semi-iconic line. Every decision made about you and your opportunities is made in a room that you're not in. I'm going to pause for those who haven't heard it again. Every decision made about you and your opportunities is made in a room that you're not in. I still believe that with every core of my being, and is actually what a potentialist focuses on. Because all momentum, invitations, questions, engagements, collaborations, partnerships, all collaborations happen because somebody else went, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? What is this idea? What is this thing that you are up to? And can I be part of it? Can I be part of it? Like you've all done this with me this morning, as I already said. Like you've all been a little bit of a potentialist because you were like, is this conversation going to be worth my time and attention? And you made up what I call a silent sentence in your head that I hope is awesome. I don't know. But you made up a silent sentence in your head based on what you know about me, what you think you know about me, and your relationship with Christy. Like you might have, as an example, said, Christy only ever invites super freaking cool people who do amazing things. Therefore, it doesn't matter who this woman is, doesn't matter what she calls herself. I'm showing up because Christy said so, right? Actually, I want to see, just a way of hands, how many people say that? That was your silent sentence. Yeah, right?
I'm honored.
As it should be. You've been incredibly consistent, which is why there are a lot of hands there. And then there are some people who were like, potentialist? What is that? That sounds interesting. And I'm curious about that. And then some people were like, hold on a second. This whole invitability thing is cool. Can I have that? And that's the space I live in, like this space of, oh, dare I say it, potential, but this space of the silent sentence that other people create in their heads about playing with you in the future and playing with your ideas in the future. And I say this because, and I think I said this earlier, like in a world of AI and technology and all of the things, um, the human to human magic is where it's all at. And I think we don't treat human magic the way we should, and we don't talk about it the way we should. I think we've been taught the wrong lesson about how to talk about human magic. And that's the, like, if you were going to compare past Joanna and what I used to talk about and current Joanna and what I talk about in the future, that shift of how do we actually talk about potential, ourselves, our ideas, that stuff in the future, and make it invitable is the place I say. And it's I love that you also just you talked about me and you said I cause your brain to bend. Um, you know, uh, like this is what happens, folks. Like when people get you, they give you the language of why you are uniquely awesome, by the way, which is why you should talk to more people. Because I'm like, what a gift. Thank you. Because the whole approach that I talk about and this whole idea around potentialism and how to be invitable is you have to get somebody's brain to bend a little bit. That's actually the whole point, and we can explore that later. But I'm now going to steal that sentence because it's amazing. Thank you.
Well, it's I'll never forget that post that I read about Pride and Prejudice,
Mhm.
how the whole decisions are made, who gets invited and how they feel about somebody. And I told you I had to read it 3 times because it was like I was getting lost. And so much of the time we don't have to read things that, cause us to really think deeply, right? But I had to read this 3 times and I felt like, wait a minute, am I dense or what? Finally, it was like, okay, I was starting to put together the pieces because it's kind of complex. But fast forward to some of your other posts, the whole thing about being invited. Okay, so you are a TED Talk. You go every year. You
Mhm.
know all about it. You know the people. But it's interesting. You don't go for the talks. You
Ah,
go
they're good,
for the,
but
I
yes.
mean, yeah, they're good. But your primary goal and objective is to meet people.
Yeah.
So tell me about your last visit. You had some phenomenal discussions, and what
Well, hang on
what
a
did
second.
you ultimately get out
Which
of it?
thread do you want me to pull? Because you talked about the Pride and Prejudice article and
Yeah.
that thing, which, good feedback for me that it was hard to, yeah, these are hard concepts, which is why I'm not presenting. Like, do you want to pull that thread or do you want to pull the relationships and why I talk to strangers
The
and
relationships,
the
because
relationship.
that's what we're going to talk about with regards to the being invited and not
Yeah.
selling.
Okay. Um, okay, so let's talk about, because that was actually, I think, the article that went out this week as I talked about going to TED. So FYI, and I popped it in the chat, folks. I do publish every week the kind of the potentialist guide to navigating the future, is the lack of a better term, where I talk about this really weird space of ambiguity and how to create momentum around it. We're not going to get to the how to get invited in 10 steps today, because it's more complex than that, which is part of the fun. But some of the ideas are there in the Pride and Prejudice article that Christy was talking about, which I hope you don't have to read 3 times, will be there. But I want to come back to TED. So yeah, I got invited, literally, to speak at TED in 2015, um, which was, I can't even describe how much of a life-changing experience it was. And not just because I got to stand in the red circle with the big sign behind me, but the experience of getting curated by the TED organization, going through the what felt like 6-month audition process. It was very intense. Spoiler alert, in my group, they were cutting people the night before the TED conference started because they were not good enough. It was a very intense experience, but getting to go to TED and being in a place where you have about 2,000, and it is, I will say it's a tiny bit elitist because it's expensive to go, and you have to apply to attend, but getting to spend a week with 2,000 people who are coloring outside the lines in ways that you can't imagine, which is why I go every year, because I was like, wow, this is like going to the most intense um, university for a week with professors that you don't get to choose, with students who are, just by the nature of who they are, intensely curious, thinking outside the box, thinking globally, um, really pushing everything from end to end. And, I come out after TED with what is called now the TED ache, because it literally hurts my brain every week. I pay to get my brain beat up once a year. And it takes me about a week to kind of find my feet again. It's that intense. Um, and it's the conversations that I have at the umpteen dinners or breakfasts or lunches that you go to. It's the people standing in line with ideas. It's the person I sit next to in the theater. It's all of those conversations that really are the really return on potential for my time, my money, my attention, all of things. The TED Talks are amazing. There is something magical about being in the room with the people, and the speakers are incredibly, doesn't matter who they are, incredibly available to the audience to talk to, which is also a lot of fun. But the conversations in line always create magic and momentum. And I say that because, when I talk about, and I am going to reference the Pride and Prejudice article, when I think about how do you think about that silent sentence thing? How do you think about getting invited? How do you think about creating momentum? There's kind of 3 ingredients that have to be there for things to get going when there is ambiguity. One of them is potential, like this, does the other person go, oh, that's interesting. Like, what is the thing? Which at TED, potential is kind of a given because you've got goo gobs of content that you can talk about. Like, we all howled like a wolf in one of the sessions because we all learned how wolf packs talk to each other, which was weird and super fun. And I now know more about wolves in Yellowstone than I thought I did. So we all howled together. So it was a conversation starter. So that is there potential for something to talk about there? There has to be intrigue. So, like, I'm a little obsessed with wolves now. I'm fascinated. Is the other person? Because if they're not, it doesn't matter how excited and interested I am in wolves. If the other person was like, that was the dumbest talk ever, game over. And then this power dynamic thing, and that's what the Pride and Prejudice article is talking about. And just to give everybody a tiny bit of a spoiler alert, I used the framework of Elizabeth Bennet and Mark Darcy and the power dynamic between them. Where did they believe, like, what was their potential narrative about their power to show how the magic between Elizabeth Bennet and Mark Darcy was never just about the prejudice nonsense, although there was plenty of that because, you know, the class system in the UK is a whole thing, way more so then, but that actually the power dynamic needed to be balanced for them to actually recognize the potential in each other. Let me give you an example. So even for those of you, has anybody in here not seen or read Pride and Prejudice, or we've all done a little, our Jane Austen circle?
I
Okay.
have not.
Oh, it's on Netflix at the moment. Keira Knightley. It's a delightful movie.
So you're going to have to catch up on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'll try to explain a little bit. But I talk about the power dynamic, not in the who has the title and who doesn't. So at the beginning of the story, Elizabeth Bennet's character, while certainly doing okay in the world, does not have the kind of power title that Mr. Darcy does, or money or any of the other things. And when you map that to a bidirectional power dynamic, one would assume that Elizabeth Bennet should basically automatically respect and honor Mr. Darcy just based on who she is, which at the beginning of the movie, she does a little bit, but not totally. Because if you think about I'm going to have you all kind of channel your inner Elizabeth Bennet for a second. If you think about her character and what she was up to, did she at the beginning of the movie go, you know, this is Mr. Darcy, he owns half of Derbyshire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And did she publicly honor him? Absolutely. Because society and the rules of society said as much. But if you actually hear her inner narrative, there's in the movie, there's a delightful scene where she and her best friend are sitting underneath a table and overhear Mark Darcy talking to his bestie. And Mark Darcy says something very rude and a bit condescending. And Elizabeth Bennet hears it and is kind of like, asshole, because he was a bit rude and condescending. And instead of being like, oh, he doesn't like me and not having a power position, she kind of privately but publicly calls him out later, about a minute or two later, on the thing that she overheard, basically messaging to him, hey, Mr. Darcy, I heard what you said, and like, don't mess with this lady. So there was a power dynamic of honored happening there publicly, but a power dynamic of like, look, you and I mean, she doesn't put pants on, but you and I put our pants on the same way, at the same time. He, however, because he was a bit of a snob at the beginning, completely operates in the you should honor me and you should only ever honor me space, which means they're out of balance. Like, part of why Elizabeth Bennet at the beginning of the movie is like jerk is because he's walking around going, I am the shit. I'm always the shit. I should be the shit, because I am me and I have all the things and society says I should be this way. Elizabeth's like, yeah, you can be because of all of that, but I'm not going to play with that. She was uninterested in inviting Mark Darcy to play because she thought he was a jerk, right? Flip that around to the end of the movie. She actually realized his pride was getting in the way and actually was a super nice guy. And the balance of power really comes to a point where even when he, at one point in the movie, he actually proposes to her and she tells him to F off in so many words. But that power balance comes back. And I talk about this power balance, and it's liked, wanted, invited, and honored are the three stages of power that I think we all go into. And the key for anybody is to play in that invited, wanted space. Like Christy, you and I have very wanted conversations because I want to chat with you, you want to chat with me, and our power is very balanced. And so we can kind of say any sort of crazy thing to each other, and it's a great conversation, right? An invited person. So we had a couple of people put their hand up and say, I showed up because Christy said so. You have, for those folks, what I call invited power. Like you're actually loaning me power to get them to pay attention to me, as opposed to actually having to pitch me and say, oh, Joanna's amazing. Like they literally showed up today because of you, and maybe a tiny bit because of me, but you actually were the one with the power. Where things get complicated is in the honored, liked space. Um, and often in much of the literary literature, research, analysis, what have you, but in the process of um, how do you actually sell your potential, sell your ideas, we are absolutely taught to either play an honored or liked, in my opinion. And I think that fails us all, because if you come in and it's honored, like I'm like my thing is great, and like we know those, we've all experienced that sort of person. Like think about the reaction, like you have a negative reaction to that almost immediately. Like you have an Elizabeth Bennet reaction to somebody who comes in and is like, my stuff's amazing. Um, or if you turn, or in the same way, if you turn around and go, like, I have this stuff and like, please like me, please like my stuff, you're actually giving all your power away. And the magic of co-collaboration, which is what we all do in this human to human world, happens when you're in wanted invited. And so you have to, you as the idea sharer and you as the idea listener have to be in this wanted space. And just to tie it all back, the magic of TED, and getting to be at the TED event is because of the tale of potential about TED. You've paid a lot of money to be here, or you've been invited by TED. Ergo, you've got to be somebody who does interest, like who is coloring outside the lines in the thing that you color outside the lines in, or you're an expert or something. The story about every single participant at TED is already assumed. And so you're already like, you don't even need to like them. You're already like, you are amazing. Now, I will caveat all of this with one of my biggest challenges at TED, and this again is why I go, is I come out at the end of it beyond inspired, like beyond inspired. Like I literally sit there and I go, what have you done with, like, what have you done with your life? What have you done with your life? The wolf guy, amazing. I will also say there was a woman there called Deja Fox, who you should watch her talk, because I was like, wow, I am excited about the youth of the future. Listening to her, so fascinating and brilliant. Inspired as all heck. I'm thinking, wow, Joanna, you need to up your game because you are not playing big enough. And at the same time, I get my ego handed to me on a platter, like literally takes a beating, like I cannot even tell you, because my own power dynamic goes, really, what have you done with it? Like, really, are you really doing what you can really do? Like, are you really stepping up to the plate? Are you really doing this? And that, like, I almost push myself into a place where I'm like, I honor these people as people who really hold a bar incredibly high for me. And I have a hard time not falling into like, because it's a very human reaction. We want to be wanted at the end of the day. But it's this is why I go to TED, is I get my ass kicked, I get inspired, and then I meet the most fascinating people and figure out how to create potential with them. That was a
So
very
it's
long
not,
answer, but does that help?
but that's okay. It's not just about meeting fascinating people. There's the relationship part of it.
Yeah,
And you talk about relationships being your investment strategy,
yeah,
right? So when we think about, I mean, whether we're looking for a partner, a companion or a mate, whether we're selling something, whether we're in business and we want to get promoted or we want to garner support for our ideas, whether we're in job search and looking for a role and we want to be wanted, right?
yep,
I mean, there's so many things. But what I'm getting from, well, and my experience as well, it's like it starts with the relationship. Nothing starts with anything other than the relationship. And fortunately, my father was a high school football coach and taught me the art of networking and being interested in people at a very, very young age. And that served me really well. Um and but but sometimes I do have to remember it's not what I'm trying to garner. It's not business that I'm trying to gain, or you know access to somebody that I'm trying to gain. It is about the relationship, and I do really well when I don't think about any other ulterior motive.
Yeah.
And so if you let's take a couple of scenarios, right? One is sales. Okay, you talk about a quantum pen. So if someone's trying to they're in a business development role, and they're trying to acquire a new client. What what are some of the things that people need to think about?
Okay. I'm gonna have to lead the group back because we just went down two different paths again.
Well, not
I want to
really
make
when
sure,
you
no,
think
it's
about
okay
it.
because you talked about the relationship thing because I have no doubt that absolutely every single person on this call understands that relationships matter, right?
But
Totally.
they matter at a different level.
Yes, but so here's the different level thing that I want to have everybody start thinking about because um, this again talks to like we all understand that relationships matter. What I think we've been taught about how to invest in them has been a bit skewed because what we've been taught is the reach and frequency approach, which is, for those of you not in advertising, an advertising term that basically says more is more. Um, and while certainly if you're Oprah, more is more works, like the fame, we've been taught the if you have more followers, if you have more this, if you have more that, the results will come. And I go, really? Because um, in relationships, it's a one-to-one conversation. And so I sit here and I say, okay, so what was the lesson in this more thing that we've been kind of getting wrong? And in this more thing, I look to business for frameworks around like why do we do things? And if you think about how business is structured, uh, today most people are either messaged play a zero-sum game or play a non-zero sum game. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, zero sum game is I win, you lose. Um, and that can be, there are certainly businesses out there and people out there that play that sort of a game. Non-zero sum game is we both get to share, we both feel like we won at the end of the day, the very simplest thing. So zero sum game, I get the pie, you don't. Non-zero sum game, we share the pie. Um, in the narrative of selling, if you actually start to map are the lessons, even with something like solution selling, there's an undertone of zero sum game across the board. Like if you actually start analyzing this, they'll be like, oh, it's mostly zero sum game because the whole narrative around selling is you need to win. And so how do you everything from manipulate to have somebody go, oh, hang on a second. Like there's a range, but how do you get somebody else to believe something different? Is a lot of what the narrative and like how do you send the right email or say the right thing? Like what is the thing that makes you win? And in looking at that, I was like, well, zero sum game playing doesn't seem like an investment strategy on relationships. It just doesn't. Because I sit here and I go, like, the moment, and you and I have never, like, you and I are friends still today because we haven't played a zero sum game with each other at all. Um, like, the moment that happens in any relationship, like, zero sum gameplay with people is the fastest way to break trust, right? Because we're like, oh, that's not nice. Does it happen periodically with any relationship? Sure. Um, but there's intention behind it. And so as I was looking at, I was like, well, hang on a second. What is the Venn diagram of where the gameplay and the relationship thing are actually working. And what I found in that was this concept of positive sum game. And positive sum game actually just basically says, how do we all have more pie, right? And if you think about relationship capital and your investment for relationships, and actually map to who are the people, professional, personal, doesn't matter, that you're like, I would bet on them, I would call them, I would invite them, I would trust them. It's the ones who you've had more pie experiences with, as opposed to winning or losing. And so and this is a human to human thing, not a thing to thing, right? And in the human to human sales process, well, I don't think we've ever really had language to say, like, what is it about this person who provided an opportunity for me versus this person who provided an opportunity for me? It's the more pie people. And more pie doesn't mean you as the person offering up products and services is just doing more. It's the bi-directional nature. Like, you feel like you're winning, they feel like they're winning, and there's more for both. And that's like, I sit here and I say, like, that's the thing. Um, that starts to actually create relationship capital. And so I then sit here and say, like, okay, so in this relationship world, as you are connecting with people, as you are collaborating with people, are you taking a not just a non-zero sum, like how do we both win, but are you actually being intentional and saying, like, is there a positive sum opportunity here? Because that investment strategy kind of makes it exponential. Which then makes, because you talked about the quantum pen, then makes me want to pivot to the pen conversation. And this is the brain. I need you all to play along with me for just a second, because this is the brain shifty thing, and why I talk about the thing we do, and why you've heard me say human to human, because I'll come back to what is all of the literature, and it's really good stuff. What is all of the literature talk to us about when it comes to creating momentum in the future, also known as sales? Whether you are in sales or not, you were all selling. But I also understand lots of us don't like this word. But how do you create momentum in the future for something? And absolutely everything has been designed around selling stuff, right? So we're going to do a little exercise right now. You can all play along. So if I was to sell this thing, you can all see what it is, right? I don't actually have to say a lot because I'm showing it to you, right? You already have a silent sentence in your head about what this is and what it does, right? You're like, oh, that looks like, and now I'm going to say the things, looks like a dry erase marker, and it means that I can, like, probably write on paper and write on whiteboards with it. You also know it's black. You probably say, well, it's probably worth what, $2, maybe $1.50, depending on who you are. You know what it is. You also know the potential of this thing. You know that in a pinch, it could stir your coffee. It's kind of gross, but hey, whatever, right? I've done it. You know, in a pinch, it could reach that itchy bit in your back that you can scratch. You know that you could put it in a door jamb and it could hold a door open. Like, it has all sorts of different uses. Like, your ability to create a future story around this is really high because you know what it is and what it does. And in the world of sales, absolutely everything we're taught is how do you differentiate the positioning of a thing that somebody wants? It is completely designed for us understanding the thing, which is brilliant when we understand what the thing is. It gets much harder and much more complicated when we don't know what the thing is. So you all now have a story about this pen. Now I'm going to flip the conversation and tell you that this just isn't some, like, this might look like an Expo dry erase marker to you, but it's actually a quantum pen. And as a quantum pen, this pen is now worth $10,000. All right, I'm going to actually ask, I want people to come off mute on this. I'm going to ask the room, how, like, what are you saying in your head when I say this is a $10,000 quantum pen? Russ?
Oh, what a scam. Total complete bollocks, as I would say.
Bullshittery exponential.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else
You're
have a different
welcome.
reaction?
It had
Oh,
better
it's the
right
idea.
upside down.
Okay,
sorry.
upside down writing. Bill?
It's the ideas that you can share with what you write from that pen.
Oh, I like that. Yep.
Mary.
I'm going to use it to create $1 million art.
Oh, okay. You've created a nice story. Is it so $1 million? So $10,000 for $1 million art piece sounds like a good idea? Like, does return on value?
Hey, somebody just sold a banana for like $25 million. So
Yeah, so like this is my like we all have that you are very right there, Mary. Didn't he end up eating the banana too? The guy who bought it,
yes,
which
he did.
don't get me started. But like we all had, and I'm going to come back to the power potential intrigue thing. Some of you went, oh, it could do XYZ. Now, I'm gonna nudge Mary for just a second because is she gonna give me $10,000 at the end of this call and buy this pen off of me?
No.
After I sell the art, I'll give you the 10.
Well, that would see now we're talking about doing positive thumb thinking. You might be like, if you let me use your pen, then we'll do a rev share on the sale that happens in the future, which will then incent me to help you sell the art in the future, right?
Correct. But you're not getting much, maybe 10%.
Well, but 10% of $1 million is way more than $10,000. I'll take that deal any day of the week.
Only if I
What
sell
I
the
do need to
arts.
find out is like, what have you sold? Have you ever sold $1 million worth of art before?
No, but I've sold $1 million worth of product. So what's the difference?
Fair enough. Now, do you see how that banter went backwards and forwards? And do you see how the power shift also happened in there? Mary was kind of unapologetic about her power and her ability to make it happen. Now, Mary and I, we don't know. Have we met before? I don't think so.
No, we have not. No.
Right. Mary and I don't actually know each other. So like I can future predict pretty easily that this deal is not going to happen because I'm all like, really? I did a Russ just then where I was like, yeah, I'm glad you say you can sell $1 million worth of product, but selling $1 million painting or pen, totally different story. I need to see some proof point because I'm on Team Russ.
Yeah, let's say I've used art in
Not
the past
necessarily my
to sell
opinion.
$1 million worth of product.
Okay, so now because I've been all like, oh, I'm on Team Russ. You are now optimizing for liked a little bit. You're not fully there because you're still like, Joanna, I'm so fucking great. You have no idea. You are. But you're pushing back a little bit, but your power just went because you gave it all back to me. And this is and I use a quantum pen because when I look at human beings and their ideas specifically, we do not fit in a nice little tiny box. I don't care what you do. None of you can be positioned in one sentence. You just can't, because the magic of you and Mary, your ability to sell $1 million worth of product is actually all of the potential stuff around the outside. Accountant, recruiter, business operations expert, supply chain specialist. It does not, like, the labels are the pen, and what makes you valuable and all of your stuff value is actually all of this stuff, which can't be nicely, tidily put into this is what I do. And that's what we've all been taught to do. Plus, so human beings are all potential. We are all we're not buying the pen part of us, we're buying the quantum part of us. We use the pen part to categorize us, but it's the quantum part that we buy. That's the thing that we go, I realize you're in category X, but I want the potential of category X.
Okay.
And that's the thing we choose.
So Joanna, let's stay on that thread
Yep.
for a bit. Job seekers, right? They get an interview. So there, somebody wants to meet them because of their background and what I always say is you get the interview because of your technical skills. You get the job because of how you've connected with that person.
Yeah.
And you talk about potential. Companies want, they some of them don't know it yet, but they want to hire the future, right?
Yeah.
They want to hire for now, but hire for the future.
Right.
And I think that that's why CIOs, their job interview process is elongating tremendously, because companies are riding on technology. They're betting on technology for their future. And so
Yeah.
they're trying to see if that person can help them
Right.
go into the future. So, but how do you broach that subject when you're having a conversation
It's a
with
power
people?
conversation. Yeah. Like, you know me, literally the way we buy and sell, literally the coolest product on the planet is a travesty. Buy and sell. Like, I think all of you are in kind of a sales-esque role. If you sold in the hiring process, if you bought the products and services that you buy the same way you buy people, you would be sold complete and utter vaporware all the goddamn time. Because we buy and sell people like we're widgets. It's, like, are you serious? A Word document? A Word document. On both sides of the equation, like, I will now calm down because I can get very ranty about that. I will leave this with this. The first job description was written in 40 AD on a clay tablet. The first resume in 1409 by Leonardo da Vinci. It's a little soundbite for everybody to now be clever and smart with other people. I'm like, seriously, people, it is that if there isn't some transformation that needs to happen, that's where it is. But let's pretend you've gotten through the, what is in essence top of funnel piece and gotten into the interview. Like, think about what an interview is. And what an interview is a bunch of questions from the person with power to the person who's trying to get their future potential chosen, and often optimizes for liked. And it's a pattern mapping experience, right? You answer questions to help somebody pattern match what they think the future should be. Like literally my head hurts thinking about how insane that is. Because it's like we're hoping somebody guesses. We're hoping somebody guesses. And when you, like, the biggest problem with that is the other sentence I'm quite famous for saying, which is potential is infinitely easier to recognize when you've seen it before. It is invisible if you haven't. I'm going to give you the practical version of that. Imagine for a second you asked, like, somebody in your interview process was like colorblind, and you were asked to explain the color red. For somebody who's colorblind, the color red is not even in their lexicon or language or anything like that. They can't even imagine it. And when you are really, like, you've gotten the interview because you fit in the box, this is the stuff that you want to find out about in the interview. And if they have not seen that kind of potential before, it's going to be invisible to them. And we basically create an entire guessing game. It's also, like, potential is infinitely easier to recognize when it looks and sounds like you, right? Which is why if you don't look and sound like and have the same experience as the buyer, you've got a harder pattern match to make. And there's a whole conversation there we'll not get into, but I just sit here and say, like, that whole framework just is insane. So what do I say in that sort of situation? I also turn around and say, look, as the seller of your potential, none of us want to go to job and be a robot. None of us really want to just show up and be like, I will do exactly what you say. With the exception if you want a job at one of the Amazon warehouses, where, some of the other issues aside, I respect the fact that they are really clear about the transaction. They are buying you for your robot ability and not your potential if you are going to go work in a warehouse. 99.999% of all other jobs aren't that. And, like, again, you think about like from the CIO, they are buying 98% potential and 2% the skills stuff, because you wouldn't even be interviewing for a CIO if you didn't have that. Whereas if you're like coming straight out of college, it's a different kind of potential, but they're like, what have you actually, like, what are your hardcore skills? Like the roles change on all of those sort of things. So when you come into the interview process, and I have been doing this inadvertently since I was about 23, come in with what I want to accomplish here is that you are able to see where I can be potentially useful to your organization, as opposed to you having to ask questions about my skills and experiences, because you're going to be hiring me for what I can do versus what I've done. Now I'm going to give you examples of what I've done, but let's make sure we're really clear about like, why is this needed in the future, as opposed to what have I done in the past, because that's the thing you actually want. And coming in with that, like how you say that, you should figure out how to say that in your own words, but how you say that in a conversation needs to come from a place of confidence in your own power. And I'll say this, like I had, well, this was a long time ago. I had a job interview many, many, many years ago, when I was invited to interview for what was then a very teeny tiny media company called Pandora Music. And they were interviewing me for a VP of ad tech position, of which, by the way, I was not actually qualified for at all. But because I knew people who knew people and I had a reputation in the industry, people were like, you should still really talk to Joanna, right? That's how I got the interview. And I sat down with the CEO, and I'll never forget this. And he said, his first question to me was, Joanna, do you think we should replace DoubleClick as the ad serving system? I just dated myself a tiny bit. Now, I knew going into that conversation, it didn't matter what his first question was. I needed the CEO to rip up the job description, because what I could do for him and what they thought they were buying were two different things. And if I tried to sell the thing in the job description and I tried to help him see the potential, I might, like, I'm a pretty good salesperson, so I could have probably like hand waved my way in because I had such reputational power. But I would have been terrible at the job. What I needed him to buy was actually what I could do for him. And so first question to not even my boss, but my boss's boss, is I said, I'm really sorry, Mr. Kennedy, but I think you're asking the wrong question. Literally the first thing that came out of my mouth after hello. And he looked at me like, who the hell do you think you are? I turned around and I said, would you like me to tell you what the right question is and why? And he was like, say more. And I pulled out my trusty marker because I like drawing things. And I basically spent 5 minutes talking about where the company was, where they were going, and what I think they needed. And I said, like, this is what they needed and why. And I said, so the question is, do you know how to turn around a media startup supply chain? Because it doesn't matter if you're selling cars or cookies. You can't scale a media organization if your supply chain is backwards. And I said, that's the right question for this position and what you need right now. And he was like, okay. And I said, okay. I said, now you have a choice. I said, you can either ask me more questions about the job you have on the piece of paper on your desk, or you can ask me more questions and get more information about what I just drew on the whiteboard. I said, because if you want the person that is in the job description on your desk, it's not actually me. And I said, I know lots of people who it is, and I'm happy to open up my network and introduce you to them. But I don't actually believe today that you need that person. You might in like 2 years, and I will hire them then. But I said, what I think you need is the person up on the whiteboard. And I said, who do you want in your future? And he took the job description and tore it up, and he goes, I want the person on the whiteboard. And I was like, great, let's talk about her then. And we had an amazing conversation. Long story short, I ended up getting the job. Now, that's a pretty dramatic example of somebody saying, like, here's the potential. But that sort of thought about, like, if you think about any job interview you've had, you have already created, before you walk into the building, especially in more senior roles, you are actually the expert in what the future should look like. It's not a are you qualified conversation. Or are they even qualified to buy you is the question. But it's more of a, do you have an understanding of what the future could be and where the complicated human decisions need to be made? And that's the story you want to start telling and talking about. Now, I will caveat, had the CEO been somebody who was like, but I should be honored, had the CEO not been curious, had the CEO not been like I'm the person who knows best, he would have thrown me out of the room. Thrown me out of the room. Here's the thing. Then it was not the job for me. Not the job for me. Right? And you think again about like, where does all the magic happen? It happens when you're in that wanted invited space. So if he'd expected me to honor him, game over. And I've got all sorts of conversations around interviews where that power dynamic is critically important, especially when you're going for much more senior roles. And so understanding how to navigate that through in the interview process is really important. And some people, like my boss in that scenario, absolutely was an honored me kind of boss, which I knew going into the conversation. And so had a different conversation with him, had a completely different conversation with him. But I knew that I wasn't really going to be working for him. I was very clear about what he needed. I knew that if the CEO and the CFO were like, this is the person, then I could do all the things. And it's really, again, it's like when you are selling potential, it is a multi-threading champion building. It's like the most enterprise of enterprise sales processes on a product that they don't even know they quite need, especially as you get more senior in an organization. So it's completely changed the paradigm.
Yeah, and what comes to mind is like getting curious, but you have to come from a place of confidence.
Yeah.
Because if you're going in saying, please hire me, it shifts the balance of power just too dramatically. But getting curious and really understanding that if this isn't a fit, I'm willing to walk away. And so much of the time we have too much of a detachment. We're running out of time, and I know Jeff has his hand up. And then so Jeff, you have a question.
I will say, I want to throw out here, your recruiters folks are the magic ingredient in this because they often know. And with recruiters, there's nothing that they want more than for you to be successful. And so if you're like, well, I have no idea, like start asking them questions like, what is their experience with hiring somebody like this? Do you know? If you were going to sit here and say, like, talk about liked, wanted, invited, and honored, like, what is the curiosity level of the executive team that's hiring for this role? What is the power dynamics between each of them? Is really important insights and information for you to understand how to navigate this stuff. But don't just come out and ask those questions, like tell them why. Because if you come in and say like, what's the power dynamic across the executive team? As a recruiter, I'm gonna be like, well, what the hell are they asking me this about? Like bring your recruiter into this tale of the potential conversation and they will absolutely be your advocate, but it's part of their job. Part of their job is to find the right person for the future. And so play in that space with them too.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jeff, your question.
I think you may have answered with a curiosity level, but I'm seeing a lot of risk aversion, especially in tough times when people are not willing to look forward. They don't want to reach out and do anything different because doing the same thing, no one gets hurt, but they have to do something different to really address the future. How do you deal with that risk aversion in their mind and get past that?
What do you, so can you give me an example of like where you're running into risk aversion?
Sure. I mean, again, to your example, if your background or your experience isn't a quick match for the job description one-to-one, and you say, here's what I can bring because the industry is moving this direction, and they may have that vision yet, and I can get you there and take you on that journey. They may say, thank you very much, but I've been told to hire someone that meets these criteria. So maybe you're not dealing with a senior enough person to change that. But how can you work with that dynamic?
Yeah, so you are just, and I know this is just an example, but this is why I will also say you cannot pitch potential.
Mhm.
Everything that you just said was a pitch where
Mhm.
you're like, buy this, as opposed to, I invite you to explore this idea.
Mhm.
And this isn't about saying the word invite in there, by the way. And this is why, like when Christy first reached out and was like, will you talk about this? And I was like, I'm not going to give the 10 steps to result, because when you are buying and selling potential, the two people, the dynamic between the two people, so the power thing that I'm talking about, the potential elements, like what do they know about the future matters, and all of the other things, like the intrigue, like where do they sit within it? Like it's a really complex process, and you have to navigate it in the moment. There isn't a, here are the 10 steps too, which is why, like, this is why I get very cross with the whole pitch thing, because I'm like, it doesn't actually work that way. And we know this because every time we go in, we're like, well, that didn't work. And so in those conversations, this is why I'm like, in those conversations, set up the conversation for, do you have, like, this is why I'm like, talk to your recruiter beforehand. Like, are you trying to buy for this? And if they say yes, open up this concept of the potential conversation, because it also could be incredibly efficient for you. Because if they come in and they're like, no, I only want to buy for this, you've got a choice. You can either say, look, and you can't obviously do the boxes. Look, for your situation in this conversation, on paper, I don't look like that. And do we want to have a conversation about why something else might be totally different? Or do you not have the power at all to even have that conversation? And I say, do you not have the power? This is really you need to be careful with your language based on who the other person is sitting across, which is why I'm never going to give you a script for this, because depending on who the other person is, it can be cratered overnight, which is why I'm like, move upstream on the conversation and have that conversation with your recruiter. I mean, also, if you're that senior in an organization, I know everybody pretty much in the ad tech world. And if I don't know them, I'm like 1 degree of separation from them. I have pre-conversations about, at least I used to, because I don't interview for jobs anymore, but I have pre-conversations with people about like what is their style? Where do they go crazy? Like how open are they to new ideas? If they've tapped into a new idea, where are they interested? And so actually having that conversation as early as possible, and actually having the recruiter help you with that. Because if they have more power than you do in that initial dynamic, and then being able to say, hey, look, I'm putting somebody in front of you who doesn't neatly fit in the box, but you should talk to them about where they actually fit outside of the box, because that's where I think the opportunity lies with this particular candidate. That's going to mean you skip all of that immediately.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I will also say, like, the risk issue, way high right now. And, this is the future article. I'm writing an article about objection handling, and how we're reactive to objections. And as a potentialist, I was talking with a client the other day, who I'm collaborating with. They're launching a new product that people are absolutely going to go, I don't get it. This is a lot of where I live. And I said, okay, so by the way, I'm going to be running around and friction mapping for you. I'm going to be going out and finding what the objections are ahead of time, because we need to know what they are actually thinking before they're thinking. And so, for the next month or two, I'm going to be running around doing, like, is it this or is it this, with a whole bunch of people, because I love meeting strangers, with a whole bunch of people to find out where they're going, oh, it doesn't make any sense. And feeling out where risk tolerance lives, feeling out where, like, what is their silent sentences, filling out all of that, so that when they come in, because objection handling 101 is say the objection before they do, right? That we can actually come out ahead of the game and say, look, I know you might be thinking X, but I wonder if you're curious about learning about Y. And that gives them the power back to choose the future that you want to paint.
This is great. Okay, another article that we can anticipate and wait for. I'm excited about that one. Joanna, we are out of time. Thank you so much. We're going to send out the link to your newsletter to
Awesome.
everyone with the recording. And please sign up for Joanna's newsletter. It is the most interesting one that I get. And even follow her on LinkedIn, because she comments on people who are saying interesting things, and her color commentary is thought-provoking as well. So
Yeah.
it's really incredible. Joanna, I am so glad that I'm in your universe, and thank you so much. And oh
if
yeah,
you're interested, I'll need to do the last. Is this an
yes.
invitation? There's a reason the fairy godmother exists. If you're interested in learning about her and her perspective, this is very much a how do you think about the future you professionally guidebook. And I use the Cinderella story to reframe a tale of potential. This is an introduction to the Bend Your Brain with Joanna experience.
So is that available on Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon.
Okay, we're gonna we're gonna
all the
send
things.
out the link for the book. And I didn't know that you had a book, and I know so much about you. I mean, it's
in my
insane.
email. See, this is what I'm talking
So-
about, folks. This has been my email signature for 2 years. And
Well,
you've
maybe
never
I
seen
did.
it.
I don't know my memory anymore.
No,
is,
this is like this is why I'm all like pitching potential. And a book is like a human being, a giant bucket of potential.
yes.
Like, I'm nauseated by how much I have to talk about this. Nauseated. And yes, there's another book coming out.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
Tale of Potential for Teens is on its way, because we decided the young people needed a little bit of this magic, and then I will be writing about potentialism. Like, I know all of you feel like you're talking about your stuff ad nauseum. This has been out for 2 years, and Christy just realized today I had a book. Like, this is what I'm talking about, folks. This is what I'm talking about.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. We're so excited to, and please share the video link with people so that they can take a listen to Joanna as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think we're seeing you next week. I have to confirm this. And Joanna, enjoy the rest of the day. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
Have a
Thanks,
great
everyone.
weekend.
Bye, have a great
Yes.
week.